for our Lunch and Learn and Redefining Suicide Prevention. I'm here with Jessie Susannah Karnatz today, the Money Witch, and we can do a little bit of introducing of the agency. My name is Basha Starr, and I work for CSS, the Crisis Support Services of Alameda County. And we are the crisis services in Alameda County. And we are doing these lunch and learns over the next, I'm not sure how long, at noon, for people to come in and talk about the work that they do in the world and how that relates to an expansive look at suicide prevention and an expansive way of where we can be in connection with our communities and thinking of how being in this connection is a way that connects to being in a state of mental wellness and goodness and connection. Let's have a next slide. I think we'll say something. Oh, yes. Let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are on Chochenyo Ohlone land. This land was stolen from the custodians of this land, and we honor their stewardship and care. We express gratitude and recognition of the forced labor that created what we have today. This country that we live in today is born upon stolen land and stolen labor. And we welcome our ancestors, past, present, and emerging. So much gratitude. Thank you all for being here. CSS, our mission is to provide a welcome and safe environment rooted in the belief that through collaboration with clients at every stage of their service, healing is possible. Our values are that we care from the inside out. With open hearts and minds, we build connections and remain committed to growth to be the best people for the people we serve. And our strategic plan to reduce barriers and stigma to receiving services. At CSS, we provide a myriad of different services. We were founded in 1966, and we offer counseling, education, and prevention services. There's a 24-hour crisis line that we house and service. And oh yes, thank you, Narcissus, for putting that in the chats. We have other services as well. We have ongoing therapy groups, school-based counseling, and supportive therapy services for seniors, suicide prevention, work with youth, and yeah, we do a lot of suicide prevention work here here in Alameda County. We believe in the socio-ecological model of suicide prevention and acknowledge that suicide prevention is not the work of the individual. It must happen on the societal and communal levels. That we're all wanting to be in the responsibility in the holding all of us together in these larger ways, all the way down to the individual ways, and all of these different places impact an individual and impact how our wellness is in community. So yes, that is some of our beliefs. And these are some of our upcoming lunch and learns that'll be happening. So please check out the space of where you can join in on a lunch and learn. I'm also under the impression that we may add more as time goes on. So there'll be more things added. So continue to look there, continue to check it out and sign up and be in connection with us. I'm so grateful for all of you being here, so many people to hear and be, and I'm just excited. Thank you so much. And I think the next slide is you, Jessie Susannah, Money Witch. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Jessie Susannah, both of them together, Karnatz, otherwise known as the Money Witch. I'm an intuitive financial coach, educator, and healer, and a priestess to the egregore of money, which means that I facilitate relationship between individuals in the collective and our collectively imagined idea of money. In order to alleviate suffering in people's lives and anxiety and bring more resourcedness to the community. Thank you very much, Basha, for having me and inviting me. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate that. This is a well, usually when I talk about money, I say, this is a very vulnerable topic, but I feel like this conversation in specific is kind of like the intersection of a few different very vulnerable topics. So I really appreciate your trust in letting me enter that space with you. And I hold it, as an honor with honor. So thank you for being here and for honoring me with your presence and your trust.
Thank you, Jessie Susannah, for being with us and being excited about having this conversation and talking about this interesting relationship around finances and how it could connect to suicide prevention. I would love to hear a little bit, I would love for everyone to hear a bit about you and what inspires you to work with people around their finances.
I think, well, I'm going to say, because it really was like the phrasing that came to me right when we sat down was like alleviation of suffering. And I think, when you sent me your questions and I was kind of like ruminating on them, I don't personally work in suicide prevention. So it was like interesting and new for me to kind of think like, how does my work intersect with this idea or like become in conversation with this idea. And that is like the main thing that really lifted out to me. And I came into this work through working in kind of like alternative economy a little bit through, starting in the sex industry and then having the opportunity to be a part of a worker cooperatization in the sex industry, and then kind of coming into worker co-op movements and being really struck by like how many people are so passionate and so skilled and so dedicated to imagining different ways of being, but also how so many of us who are doing that work, like individually, organizationally, business-wise and worker co-ops, et cetera, are like under-resourced and suffering financially because of somewhat of a lack of skill set and a lack of like cultural, competency of financial skills and those different areas, but also because of so much like emotional baggage, obviously, around money. So wanting to really free up some space and energy for people to become more resourced or just be present with the journey of becoming more resourced. Oh, and in that, I wrote down like, I want people's lives to be easier. Yeah, I want people's lives to be easier. And I think that we have a lot of, I don't know, just unnecessary time and energy that's being like sucked up and drained by our, our baggage with money, our anxiety about money, things that can be on a healing journey if we're like more present with them. So that's the inspiration.
Jessie Susannah, I'm not sure if you can hear me at all, but for some reason I can see your glorious face and I can't hear anything of all of the magic that you've just said. I don't imagine that that's the case for everyone
Everyone
because
else
no one
can
else has
hear
said
her. Everyone
anything,
else can hear
but I'm
you.
not quite sure. Yeah, everybody can hear. I can't. I'm glad that you can all hear me as well. Great, thank you. But I wish I could have heard all of the things that you said, so I could slide us easily into our next question. But for some reason, my computer is being a little bit glitchy. Maybe what I'll do is I'll ask the next question, and um, and then I'll kind of hop out and hop in and see if that's helpful. But the next question that I have for you is, what is your philosophy around healing, and how does it connect with your work?
Okay. So to me, I define healing that the tagline of my business is heal your finances. So that is like the premise of what I'm doing. And of course, you know, healing is not, it's not like linear. It's not a destination, you know, it's a process. It's a journey. It's my personal spiritual belief. I don't need anyone else to believe it, but that's, you know, we're called in, our soul is called into our body to be on a journey. Like we need these particular journey that is going to come from being incarnated in our particular body in this particular point in time space. And we have a path of healing in this human life, which is relatively short part of our existence. So in that, I think our purpose of our lives is really like to heal. And that's like walking our path, being in our particular lineage of like what we need to move and learn in our lifetime. And I define healing as movement of energy. So those are kind of the things that I'm calling people in to do with their finances, like move energy in your financial life. And then because I'm coming from a magical perspective, a witchy perspective, to me, the magic part is like movement of energy with intention, you know, with a focused intention of your choosing. So, breaking that down a little bit in my work, I'm always kind of balancing, you know, magical, emotional, and logistical. So I have what I call the 3 angles of healing. It's like a little triangle. And my again, it's not anything you have to do, but I think that we see the most shift. We see the most of this movement of energy on any particular topic. You know, I do it with money, this particular 3 angles thing, but you could really do it with anything when you're addressing an issue from all 3 sides. So one is logistical, practical, one is spiritual, emotional, and one is magical, energetic. So I see it as like, you know, you can take an action in any 3 of those places, but you're going to see the most movement and the most healing on a topic when you're taking action in all 3 of those areas over time in a kind of parallel type of way. So, you know, magical, energetic might be your prayer work, your altar, lighting your candle. The practical, logistical is like, it's like, okay, you can light the candle to get a job, but then like you have to put the applications in, you know, like that's, you have to go both sides, right? And then the spiritual, emotional is like, and maybe you also need to be like having some therapy sessions or journaling or, you know, et cetera, around like, what is it that's been like holding you in a certain type of job or, you know, et cetera. And of course, and always, I just want to say, I'm talking about I liked your model. Like I'm talking about like the individual inner experience within relational, societal, systemic, you know, housed inside of those things. Can you hear me now, Basha? Yes. Okay, perfect. Fabulous. Okay. So that's my philosophy of healing. And I feel like just bringing that into people's financial lives seems to be able to bring movement that is in that it's kind of freeing, I think, to shift to a model of being present with your finances and trying to shift energy in your finances rather than, you know, what is a sort of typical in the United States culture, which is like willpower ethic around finances. So, you know, my big thing this year was like, your finances don't need willpower, they need love, you know, so just shifting that paradigm to connect with money, being more present and loving with money.
Jessie Susannah, before my next question, somebody asked like if you could name the 3 sides again of the
Yeah, I also have it. I want to, I can drop, I have like a graphic of it on my website, but it's logistical, practical. I'm going to pull it up because I want to send it to you guys. Magical, energetic, and then spiritual, emotional.
Thank you.
But I love this. There's a really great graphic. So you have to just scroll down on this page. There's like a triangle here. And it's, okay. If you scroll down on that page on my website, there's a triangle graphic illustration of it. You can have it forever.
Thank you for sending it through. So we believe that the personal informs the professional and center lived experience as our guide, like in our agency. That is like how we're centering a lot of our work. How does your lived experience guide your purpose and your values in your work?
I think like, you know, the most important framing of my work, like how my person sits in my work, is that I feel very clear that I'm not an expert, like I'm not a financial expert, which I feel like in the financial sphere, you know, that is the, I mean, probably in a lot of spheres, but in the financial sphere, that is very like the dominant paradigm of teacher as expert. And even in the developing of my business, I've been encouraged and you know, pushed, I would say encouraged, to frame myself as an expert in certain ways. And I just, it's like, I don't want it, I feel like a guide, because I feel like I am like also on the journey. I'm also going on the journey. And sometimes questions like this are harder for me to answer because I feel like a lot of my work is channeled, like I'm a channel, and it was just something that I kind of was brought into and called into in, you know, through my own very meandering journey. Like I have my own very meandering journey of building a toolbox that's like a very specific esoteric toolbox that like lands me here to be called in to do this. And the invitation came through the like wanting to solve this problem of alleviating you know, financial suffering within organizations and also for, you know, individuals. But yeah, I don't know, I'm just somehow like uniquely, my path like made me the right shaped vessel to do this, you know, to be the channel for this particular group of things. But I'm just on the journey like everybody else, like figuring it out all the time along with everybody else. So yeah, that's the short answer maybe.
I love that. I love being on a journey. I want to have some tea. But I also really appreciate both like where you're speaking to about this place of like not being the expert. I think that there's like so much pressure put on us to like be some certain type of way for whatever it is that we're doing, and then we have to excel in it, and that can be like so overwhelming and so burdening. But it doesn't necessarily mean at all that we don't have like a wealth of knowledge of experience that allows us to do that work, that allows us to do that magic or be in that creation or like helping or assisting, that it's not about perfection, which sometimes at least for me and my own like lived experience of like how stuff works in my mind, perfection is such a big thing for how it puts into my oh, somebody is saying that they can't hear me.
It's really not.
I think it was just someone needed to be muted.
Oh, okay, great. I was like, the computer is so bad, I just only can jump right to that assumption every time. But anywho's, um, so I feel grateful for you pulling out this piece around that expert doesn't imply that doesn't isn't a necessity for like the doing, the actioning, and the being in like successfully and amazingly. Um, and also in this place of like lived experience and perfectionism and how that sits in one's mental wellness. The next question I have um, is around the connection to suicide and connection in this way to well, I think the way that I framed it was talking about finances can be super, super taboo. Talking about finances, being in financial wellness, or even this idea of like the illusion of financial wellness is like needed, and anything around that is like taboo and tricky to talk about. And so is suicide also, like to talk about like people's, to talk so vulnerably about where somebody may be in suffering. And I'm wondering if you could speak to how your work in connection financial security is connected to suicide prevention.
As I mentioned, this is a new question for me to sit with for sure. I think, I know I gave it to you guys, and so I'm assuming it'll go out to everybody at some point. Like I did some work last year on financial abuse, or like finances, kind of like the intersection of finances with domestic violence. And I feel like at a certain point, we're kind of back to those words that came at the beginning, like alleviation of suffering, alleviation of distress. Like how can we be open about the distress that we're experiencing, both in conversation and also with ourselves? And how can we, open to shift in that? Or how can like conversation, we're talking about, right? Because we're talking about this idea of like it being a taboo topic to discuss. How does talking move energy, and I feel like that sits differently for different people. But, for me, I find I'm an external processor. I find talking about things to be really powerful in making connections, moving energy, connecting dots, which can then sometimes weave a context, which then can alleviate suffering. I think one of the things that I know that my work does is give language to some of the financial distress, or like the distress that people feel in their financial lives. And I would imagine that, coming across language for explaining emotion, or just like the distress of internal experience across the board, like wherever that lives for you, finding language for that. I don't think it's as powerful a tool for everyone, but for a lot, when it is the right tool, like when language is the right tool, I find that it can really like, even having the language is healing sometimes, so that piece. And then, in that, ideally, when people are doing healing work in their finances, they're at some point going to see some improvement of material conditions as well, right? Like it's not a mandate of the work that I do, but, ideally that is what I hope for people. Additionally, so external and internal alleviation of suffering. The second piece, I think, is a sense of purpose. Like a lot of us find distress in how much unnecessary suffering exists in the world of finances and money, within the context of late stage global capitalism. And I I think that can really contribute to people feeling like hopeless, and like unnecessary, so much unnecessary suffering. So I think that one of the biggest parts of my work that I think can help people ground in their incarnation, right, which is essentially what that means, to stay alive, is to find a sense of purpose in the work that we're doing, of just being alive in these bodies at this time. That's not an accident, and money is not something that you like just have to suffer through because you happen to be here, that we're here on purpose, and therefore being here under these conditions is somehow like we're essential to this moment somehow. So I think when I was thinking about, how to like the intersection there with like my work in suicide prevention, it's those two things. So alleviation of distress, internal and external, finding language, and then a sense of purpose, a spiritual sense of purpose in incarnate.
Inside, being here currently in the
Here,
present. Yeah. And I really, really appreciate too this, like, I'm also can relate to external processing in a big way, but like once we have language, or we have this space to like put an understanding, moves away from the taboo, like as we like figure out ways to talk about it, or figure out ways to like sit in it, with having it be normalized in conversation, like financial healing, anything really, but financial healing be normalized in conversation can so much remove some veils, or some things that feel really, really hidden, that can be really distressing. Thank you for sharing. I wonder if you would like to speak about your connection to community in this work, and how community is sustaining you, and how this work is like being in this kind of work sustains you, being in this kind of work with people.
I feel like 100% fed by community, or maybe 75% fed by communities, 25% fed by spirit, maybe something like that. But I feel like because I felt kind of called into what I do, I feel like the external feedback piece is very important to me, because it's like, that's the signpost of like, okay, is there positive impact? Do the people I work with relationally, and then, community in general, reflect back that they find this work, or this framing, or this lens valuable? Does it bring value to people's lives? So I feel like very attuned to that, and very, I'm always like listening to that community connection, radio station to kind of listen, just like hear like what, what's on the line there. I don't know. I think just like, checking in, like I feel like my role in community is to be like, to keep doing this work as long as it helps people feel better. And so just paying attention to that. I think, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Jessie Susannah. I appreciate it. People are asking some juicy questions, and we're at the end. We're at the place of like, is there any last thing you want to share before we open up to questions, Jessie Susannah? And so I'm going to ask you that really quick. Is there any last things you want to put out there before I start asking some of these like juicy pieces?
I wanted to circle back, I think, to respond to something that you said in response to something that I said earlier, which was when we were talking about the idea of like the pressure on practitioners to feel expert, and what does it look like to kind of alleviate some of that, in, partly in an attempt to kind of heal out of these perfectionist tendencies, but also to just know that like our work can be valuable, because I know that there are a lot of practitioners in this group of like, you know, variety of practices, I guess. I don't know, I just think I want to share like my experience with that. Like I do struggle a little in that place, you know, so, but I think like, and I cycle back, you know, constantly. It's a practice that I'm in to kind of be like called into that question of like, well, I don't even understand X, Y, and Z, or like, I don't have X, Y, and Z in my life. So, you know, like, am I in a position to, you know, be working with people in this sphere, and then kind of having to work through like different layers of that, you know, in my own like spiralic process. So I say that just to like normalize it, I think, because again, I think like talking about not being an expert is also sort of a taboo topic, you know, so I want to like untaboo that by just like saying that right now. And that it's like external as well, right? Like there's an anecdote in my book, or it's like I taught in San Francisco at a herb shop, and then I learned third hand, right? Like this third hand thing came down to me, that the owner of the herb shop said, like, they were like, the money witch, I heard she's not even rich, you know? I was like, I always love it. It's one of my favorite anecdotes, you know? So I definitely wrote it in the book, but you know, there is that, I think, pressure to be, there's a lot of, let me say this, there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a trend or whatever of kind of teaching healing from a place of like, well, I healed in this specific way and you can too. You know, it's sort of like what are they called? Those commercials on television, like late night commercials on television. There's a word. Someone will put it in that.
Infomercial.
Infomercial. Yeah, like this infomercial kind of like healer infomercial, like I'm making 7-figure launches and you can too, you know, like I'm doing this and you can too. And I think it takes a different type of, I don't know, grounding to say like, well, I'm not doing that great, but I'm trying and you can too, you know, like that's like a different angle. And I really want to just encourage like the practitioners amongst us to just stand in that, like ground in that. And yeah, I want to like really lift up that thread of practitioner-ness.
Thank you. Nathaniel, I see your hand raised, but there are some questions that have come in a little bit before, so I'm going to loop back to you as best as I can and keep some track. The first ask is, could you speak to the financial inequity for mental health workers and how to help in doing such hard work for such low wages? Like, is there some way you can, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of therapists in my kind of, you know, like I have a online membership program and I have, you know, sessions and whatever. There's a lot of therapists in my sphere, right? Because I think, especially when people, there's a particular experience, a lot of mental health work requires graduate level education, and it is like this moment of being like, I am stepping into a profession, right? Like a higher level, whatever that means, profession, career. And, you know, for a lot of people too, that is a differentiation maybe from the rest of their family, the way they were raised. And so it's like this expectation of kind of like, well, that should come with some sort of class shift and some sort of, you know, financial match. And then often it doesn't. And there's a very particular, financial struggle within the mental health sphere of often, are you going to work at an agency, which is sometimes like more in alignment with people's values, but also even their personalities, right? Like, I don't even think it has to be a value. Like, it's a lot of times it's framed as a values, like, are you going to work in an agency or you're going to work private practice? But also it can just be like a personality thing. Like, some people prefer to work in an organization, or they prefer to work with clients who have lower income, or, it's just like your preference, right? And then the kind of struggle with like, do I need to go into private practice to make more money? And then if I do that, like, how do I figure out how to run my own business, doing all these things? And how do I charge people individually and feel good about it? So there's a whole, it's not just one thing, right? That I could say like, here's the financial healing aspect, within mental health practice for mental health practitioners. There's a whole kind of like geography and landscape in there of what that looks like. So people are having their own individual experience within it, and needing to kind of like build skill set and make choices and kind of grapple within that. And there's a lot of things like I don't even need to say, right? Which is like, we don't live in a culture that like values mental health work, and that is reflected in the pay. Or we live in a society where to a certain extent there's an active investment in people not being healed, or not having certain kinds of suffering alleviated, and that's reflected in the pay. It's also reflected in the philanthropic field, which is like money laundering for capitalism, etc. Anyway, I could talk on this. I could probably talk for an hour on this particular question, but if there's a clarifying question, feel free. But those are some of my thoughts.
I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And I also I want to deep dive in, and I kind of bounce off of that question and go a little harder. And there's also people in line with some questions. So the next question that was listed was from Annie. I'm curious to hear more about how the Money Witch works with people and what financial healing can look like, and what the work is.
Yeah.
And Julie also was like, yes, please.
Okay, so I hear three questions there. So one, what the work is a practice of being present with your money, being present with your finances, not checking out. And in that, being present to seeing the web of kind of thought feelings, ancestral, family, experiential, reaction to the systemic emotions, right? That are in your body and in your mind and in your inner experience around money. And then, staying present, like following those paths, staying present with those things, exploring them, in the same way that you kind of would with, anything that works for you, right? That could mean like talking to a therapist about it. It could mean somatic work. It can mean journaling. It can mean, thinking about it and talking about it with friends. It can mean, grieving work, ritual, any of those things, right? But it's really about like staying present with your money and your finances long enough for the kind of underlying web to come up, to notice yourself and be intimate with yourself around money and what you do, so you can find out like why you're doing it, and you can shift it to whatever extent you want to. I feel like when you do that work, it alleviates suffering and it alleviates shame, which is massive in the work that I do, right? Like working with shame, and it frees up some space, like we said, moving energy. So we're like cracking a window, shaking the sheets out, kind of bringing some new, fresh energy in. And that fresh energy can be new habits, literacy that hasn't felt accessible because of the emotional baggage, etc. Intention, just like more space to bring intention in. So that's what the work is. That's what financial healing can look like. And I work with people right now. I do a handful of things. So I write, I have a book, and I also have a kind of smaller book. I call it a zine, about budgeting. I make energetic products. So gem essence-based products that you can work with moving energy in your energetic body. And I do one-on-one coaching for 3-month stints. I take people on for like 3-month stints of one-on-one coaching. And then I have a monthly membership program called Money Coven, where people are kind of like, daily having discussions about different financial topics. And we do live events, Q&A. We do like a study hall where people can come and get their stuff done. And all my online courses live in there too. So that's the main ways that I'm working with people right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessie Susannah, for sharing about your work and how the work looks. There's like some juicy stuff in the chat about how like holding one's financial healing, like leveling some power differential, like talking about like this idea of gatekeeping and where knowledge is like has been historically just held and hoarded. And so I so much appreciate this moment of saying something out loud. Nathaniel, you've had your hand raised for so long. You have a question.
Yes, it's more of an observation than it is a question. And I think that in regards to healing, and she mentioned, I don't need anyone else to believe in it. And I think that a lot of people, because of their sharing with others what may be going on in their life from an emotional perspective, and then not having that person believe in what was being shared or give the impression of not really believing what was being shared, causes a lot of emotional stress on people, and having to have someone to believe in what it is that you're going through, what you're experiencing from an emotional perspective. And I think people take the pressure off themselves of having to have someone simply believe in them and what their efforts are. That would leave a lot of tension off of people as well. So it's more of an observation as opposed to a question.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. I think, yeah, I mean, it also, I feel like has woven in, when it's woven into that kind of expert conversation as well, right? Where, there's always going to be people externally that reflect your deepest insecurities back to you, So periodically there are definitely people who pop up to tell me that I'm not qualified to do what I do. And that is impactful personally, but I feel like I've given myself the gift of like almost looping back to that community conversation. Do I see reflected in community, value? I don't know. Are there people who do believe me, and does it bring them value in their lives? I don't know. Basha, do you have thoughts?
I have so many thoughts, and I'm also like trying to there's so many questions and some people with hands raised, but yeah, I think I'm also still like kind of formulating my mind around this too, this idea of like where one sits in like where I personally sit in my like belief of others, and where I sit in like my belief of myself, and where I sit in like my need or desire for the reflection of belief in my possibility by those externally, and grappling with that honestly, you know what I mean? Like somehow thinking like I should have it inside, but somehow thinking like being in connection with community is having it reflected from outside. Like that is like important and necessary and part of like what should be happening, even though we're taught all of these things anyway, meshing in my mind. But I appreciate the share so much, Nathaniel. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jessie Susannah, too. Ed, I see your hand raised, and there's one question in front of you, so I'm going to ask it really quickly, and it's from Dr. Tempest Henning. Dr. Tempest would love to hear your thoughts and advice to those of us who view life here on this plane as temporary or brief in the grand scheme of things, and ways to motivate us to be more focused on our money in the here and now.
Yeah. So again, based in my own spiritual beliefs. It's my spiritual belief that the most important thing your soul could be doing at this time is embracing the human, like very human experience as much as possible. So that means really embracing having a body, and not just a body, your body, right? Really embracing being in this moment in time space, really embracing everything that means to be human. A huge part of being human is survival. And right now that means money. So like really diving deep into the just almost like mundane aspects of being human is your soul's most important work right now. And I believe that that is evidenced by the fact of your incarnation. So this is the assignment, like this is the assignment that you're in right now. And it's not like if we're to believe that, then we have to believe that the power that built the curriculum and gave you the assignment knows what they're doing on some level and believes that this is what you need, right? Like your spiritual teacher in the meta sphere of just like biggest sense of the word, your spiritual teacher has said, like, I need you to spend, 0 to 120 years doing this thing, figuring out how to be in this body, in this moment, in this place. And the more checked out of that we are, the less that we are being present with the assignment. And I don't think money is an aside from that. I think the survival aspect of being human and figuring out how to have resources, use resources, and share resources as a human is a major part of the assignment. So I think just considering it as holy, and as a lot of lessons from spiritual teachers, we don't always understand the value or what we're doing in the moment that we're doing it. But if we're giving that trust, if we're giving trust to our creator, then we're going to accept the assignment and be as embodied in it as we can.
Thank you for sharing your understanding in this. There's a lot of things there. People are asking a lot of questions about your one-on-one. Narcissus is sent through your website so that people can check into that. Folks are really wanting to know the co-op that you were connected with around sex work. And of course, Ed has Ed's hand up. And I would love to hear what Ed's question is.
I will look. The link about my one-on-one work is like a private link in this moment. So I'll look for it and drop it in the chat before the end of the day. The co-op that I was a part of is the Lusty Lady in San Francisco, is a peep show in North Beach. It's still kind of there as an empty shell of a building. You can go visit it if you're in the Bay. It's right next to the Hustler Club on Kearney. And that was one of the first successful, it might have been in the US. It was one of the first successful, it was one of the first and one of the first successful unionization efforts in the sex industry, and specifically with strip clubs. And we were a part of SEIU from the late 90s until the time that we closed in, I'm going to say, okay, I can track that. Maybe 2013 or 2014 is when the Lusty closed. And then in, I think 2004, Oh, no, it's 2013 because someone said this is the 20-year anniversary. We're about to have the 20-year anniversary in May. So we were gonna all be laid off and we decided to buy it as a worker-owned cooperative. And then it was run as a worker-owned cooperative for 10 or 11 years before closing.
And Ed, you had your hand do you still have it?
Yeah, no, I'll just be real quick. So it sounds like there's like a lot of encouraging and motivating that you do to help people build their financial security. And so I just had a question, like, because a lot of what you're saying, it sounds like it's predicated on, you know, how you see the world. And so how do you handle like people who have different worldviews, or maybe who subscribe to like monotheistic, like religion? Do you have clientele like that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I am religious, I'm Jewish, but I am not monotheistic, so it gets a little complicated there. But I feel like there is a connection, like in terms of thinking also about clientele, right? Like how to kind of tap into helping clientele that are in a sort of monotheistic religious framework. I think I do think that this idea of being created, there's almost like more buy-in, honestly, when people are coming from a monotheistic background. There's more buy-in of the idea of like, I was created by one creator, right? Like a one God creator, and my life is a gift, and I need to like honor that in a particular way. So I think kind of reaching into that and like healing my vessel for my soul, I think can really cross over into that, into that worldview. When I'm kind of dealing with people who are like in a way different worldview, like, I don't believe what you're saying, it's a little bit different for me, but because, I'm freelance, or essentially like private practice, I'm just like, well, it's like there's billions of people on earth. Like what I say is not going to resonate for everybody, and I don't need to be everybody's teacher. I don't need for everyone to believe what I believe. Like if it's the right thing for you, if I'm the right guide for you, then that's great. And if I'm not, then it's okay. I think it's different when you're working in like an agency capacity and you're really charged with like needing to bridge the gap, and not necessarily being able to just say like, well, it sounds like I'm not the right practitioner for you, like, bye. So I'm not sure if that's like where that question is coming from, but that's kind of like what I hear in there is sort of like, I don't know. Do you want to respond to that?
yeah, no, it makes sense. But the only question I would have is, if there's this, people have like contradictory views, particularly when I was looking at your site just now. I also had like a question in terms of the difference between spirituality and magic, because a lot of people, for example, would find that contradictory, who subscribe to certain religious views. Like for myself, for example, I subscribe to Christianity, and so I just have, just wondering what your views are on that. Like if you ever run into that, people who want support but find that maybe some of the language that's being given is kind of contradictory to their own views.
Yeah, I think the reason I said, right, and we even kind of highlighted it with the question we had before, I say like, this is my spiritual belief. My work is kind of grounded in my spiritual belief. I don't need anybody else to believe what I believe, right? Like it's not important to me. You don't have to take the work whole, I find too, sometimes when I recommend books in general, like not even just for work, like there's, all of our brains work different. For me, I can read a book where I think a lot of what someone has said is problematic. I don't like it. I disagree, but there's some pieces that I want from it, right? And I'm like, I can kind of glean the pieces that I want. I feel like for some people, if that is too distracting, right? Or it's like hard to, it just makes it like unpalatable, or like you can't digest it because it doesn't, you know, there's parts of it that don't align. So some of it can just be a personality thing, but you know, anyone who wants to is invited to like take what they want and what they find valuable from my work and like, you know, reject the rest, right? It's a digestion process. We're digesting information the same way we digest anything, right? So we like eat it, you know, some of it we incorporate and some of it we release. So like there's an invitation to that if you want. And I think for myself too, in terms of like monotheism or Christianity, like my work tends to lean into the mystic side of things, right? So it's like there is like mystical Christianity, and in mysticism, we're finding the connection between all things, right? So we can say like, this is my God, this is my religion, this is my culture, but also like, I understand that there's a connection between all things. And to me, that's just sort of like what magic is like appreciating nature, or, you know, calling in like angels and saints to me as a way that like Christianity relates to ideas that feel similar enough to what I do or what I believe in, that I feel like there can be connection. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just feel like, you know, take what you want and leave the rest. And there are a lot, the world of financial healing and education is vast. And there's a lot of really cool religious, you know, Christian, Jewish, Muslim teachers that teach like kind of like within, you know, financial healing and financial literacy and building up like within that financial sphere or within that religious sphere, which can make it feel more comfortable.
Thank you, Jessie Susannah. I'm going to sneak in real quick because we only have 1 more minute, and I wanted to highlight that there was something that someone had wrote and people had like kind of touched into it. They were very interested in this module, and like there's the focus of like when accessing resources requires money, and like due to financial limitations, it makes it much harder to be alive and much more difficult. And I know we only have like literally 30 seconds, but I wanted to like speak to that because I think it's like a valuable thing to say and name. And I wanted to see if you had any like last closing bits around when we sit in capitalism, around this piece of not everybody has access.
I think, you know, like when I'm reading the comment, you know, about thinking about like accessing resources, you know, I would just say like, I do truly believe that inner work around finances can lead to a difference of circumstance externally. And I don't mean that in a way where it undoes or overrides systemic impact. I mean that bringing presence, like a lot of intention of presence to your finances, can help you create more space to be intentional with what you're doing in your own financial sphere. And that can allow for space to be like, you know, my intention is that I want to prioritize this kind of self-care. Let me see what I can do in my finances to make that possible. Like what is possible, not like what is possible in terms of erasing systemic impacts, but what is possible in terms of my own financial behaviors and habits and how my emotions are impacting them, or like what needs to be healed in order to see some sort of shift and change. So I would say like without, obviously we could talk about that topic for an hour, you know, but the 1 minute version is like just an invitation and a call to like more presence with finances in order to explore like what might be in there.
Jessie Susannah, I want to thank you again for being with us at this time, for sharing of your work, sharing of what moves through you in your work. And I want to thank everybody who came and participated in this Lunch and Learn, all of the questions, all of the like juicy conversation. So grateful for all of us being in this connectivity. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Jessie Susannah, so much.
Thank you. I want to drop, hold on, I'm getting it now. I'm trying to find my one-on-one. Maybe I can give it to, are you guys going to do a follow-up email?
We're going to
I'm
put
not-
the video on the Redefining Suicide Prevention website that I just tossed in there in the
Awesome.
chat, and we can link to your website and
I'll just link it.
your work in there.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Oh, the name of my book is called Money Magic. It's from Chronicle Books. Thank you, everyone.